embers against the black, and the dreadnought Etherian cut through them with regal indifference. Its metallic skin shimmered with the soft pulse of shield light, each flicker a heartbeat of the Galactic Empire's arrogance. Inside, the bridge hummed with quiet efficiency, thousands of years of conquest distilled into routine. Grand Admiral Vurek Tal stood before the viewing pane, hands clasped behind his back, posture sculpted by decades of absolute power. His reflection, a tall figure with ridged silver skin and eyes like molten steel, regarded the burning human colony below. Smoke and atmosphere bled into orbit as if the planet itself were exhaling in defeat. "Resistance minimal," he said, voice low, but carrying the weight of command. "Primitive energy weapons, no organized fleet. Their courage is almost touching." A ripple of laughter followed from the crew pit. Officers in imperial uniforms exchanged smirks, recording casualty figures like accountants balancing ledgers. "They called us devils," one of them sneered, tail flicking lazily. "Do they think words sting harder than plasma?" Vurek turned. "No, but fear does. And they are learning." At the edge of the command pit, a young officer, serene, flinched at the sight of the burning cities projected across the holotable. Her scales reflected the light of human fires. She tried to hide the unease in her voice. "Sir, reports indicate survivors requesting surrender. Do we proceed with elimination?" Vurek regarded her for a moment, expression unreadable. "Yes. Extinguish it cleanly. No fragments of resistance. Mercy is waste." She nodded, eyes down, and relayed the order. When the beam struck, she couldn't look up. Across the bridge, officers resumed quiet chatter. Someone made a joke about human art, pictures of oceans and skies, as if they feared empty space. Another mimicked a human distress call, earning snickers. The Empire's finest, bored, confident, untouchable. A communications officer interrupted the noise. "Transmission from High Command, sir. The Council authorizes expansion into Sol Sector. Preliminary scans show an inhabited world designated Earth. No significant defenses." Vurek arched a brow. At last, the origin world. Let's put an end to their myth. He dismissed the crew with a gesture and stepped toward the viewport, watching the flames below dwindle into darkness. The sight was familiar, almost soothing. Yet for the first time in years, he felt a faint discomfort, an echo of something he could not name. The humans, in their final moments, hadn't screamed. They had sung. 2 days later, the Etherian entered Sol space. Scans confirm, civilian vessels only. One moon base abandoned. Several obsolete satellites still broadcasting in analog. Any military response? None detected. Then begin. The Admiral's voice sliced through the bridge, like a blade. Weapons crews armed the forward batteries. The Etherians' massive guns pivoted toward the blue world, suspended before them. Earth looked small, fragile, almost peaceful. "Transmit a warning before we fire," Vurek said, half amused. "Let's hear them beg." A signal burst across open frequencies, a human voice, calm and steady. "This is Earth Defense Command. You are entering restricted space. Turn back." The bridge erupted in laughter. "Defense Command," one officer mocked. "From what?" "Their own optimism." Vurek smiled thinly. "Fire a warning shot at their moon. Let them understand who rules the stars." The beam struck without sound, carving molten scars across the lunar surface. Sensors registered no retaliation. Earth's surface remained silent. No panic, no transmissions, no movement. "Strange," Serene murmured. "No attempt to flee?" "They're frozen by fear," said another. Vurek watched the quiet planet, unease gnawing faintly at his confidence. "Maintain position. Prepare secondary." Space convulsed. Every light on the bridge flickered, instruments spasmed, alarms blared in mechanical panic. Space itself rippled, folding like fabric under invisible hands. The helmsman shouted, unknown distortion ahead. No warp signature. No gravitational origin. "Identify." Vurek barked. "I can't. There's nothing to read." Then it appeared. A shadow, vast and impossible, materialized in the void without sound or light. It didn't emerge from hyperspace. It was simply there, as though it had always been. Metal black as night, surface smooth, absorbing starlight instead of reflecting it. Its outline hurt to look at, edges shifting as if reality disagreed with its presence. "By the stars," Serene whispered. "Is that human?" Letters burned faintly across its hull, HSS Nemesis. The sensors tried to scan it and failed. Systems crashed. Data loops returned blank. The ship wasn't cloaked, it was absent. Vurek's throat tightened. Open a channel. Now. The main display shimmered, then stabilized into the image of a human woman. Her uniform was dark, unadorned, eyes calm like deep water. "This is Captain Helena Ward of the Terran Defense Initiative," she said evenly. "You have committed an act of war against Earth. You are instructed to withdraw immediately." Her voice was soft, almost polite. No threats, no rage. That frightened Vurek more than any roar could have. He straightened, forcing authority back into his posture. "You presume much, human. You stand before the Imperial fleet of 10,000 systems. You will surrender your vessel or be neutralized." Her interruption was gentle, almost bored. "This is your only warning." The bridge fell silent. Vurek's officers glanced at him, uncertain. He smirked to hide the tremor in his hands. "Fire all batteries." The Etherean unleashed its fury. Beams of blue-white plasma tore across space, detonating with star-bright violence. Yet when the light faded, the Nemesis remained untouched. No scorch marks. No heat trace. "Impossible," shouted the weapons officer. Before Vurek could respond, the Nemesis moved. Not with thrusters, not with any visible propulsion. It flickered, vanished, and reappeared behind the Etherean, impossibly close. The sensors screamed error codes. Shields at maximum. Too late. A thin line of white light lanced out, silent and surgical. The Etherean shuddered once. No explosion. No flames. Just a deep metallic groan as the ship's hull split open, folding in on itself like paper crumpling in slow motion. Vurek stumbled, catching himself against the rail. The bridge flickered with failing power. Through the viewport, he watched fragments of his ship drift away, cut so cleanly that decks still glowed from interior lights. Static crackled through the comms. Then Helena Ward's voice again, calm as before. "You were warned." Vurek turned toward the fading image of Earth, his pride collapsing faster than the dying lights around him. He had seen many enemies, countless rebellions, but never this. Not silence as a weapon. Not precision like contempt. What are they?" one officer whispered. Serene stared at the void where the Nemesis hovered, her voice barely audible. "Prepared." Vurek said nothing. He felt it now, the thing he hadn't known in a lifetime. Not anger. Not shame. Fear. The Etherean drifted helplessly in orbit, engines failing, its once invincible commander staring at a single Terran warship that had come from nothing, and made the Empire realize what it truly meant to provoke Earth. The silence that followed was not peace. It was a warning. The wreckage of the Etherean hung in orbit like a broken crown, its shattered hull turning slowly in the light of a distant sun. From the command bridge of the HSS Nemesis, Captain Helena Ward watched the silent drift of debris. Her expression betrayed nothing, no satisfaction, no sorrow, only the quiet, calculating focus of someone who had been expecting this moment for a very long time. The bridge around her was dim and minimalistic, built for function, not comfort. Human officers worked in near silence, their faces pale in the glow of instrument panels. The air felt dense with unspoken weight. Every motion was deliberate, rehearsed. This was not humanity's first war, but it was the first one they had chosen to finish on their own terms. "Report," she said. "Imperial flagship disabled. Survivors detected on lower decks." "Minimal escape pods deployed," replied Lieutenant Chun, his voice clipped. "Recover what you can. We'll need confirmation, data, logs, anything that tells us how far their networks extend." "Aye, Captain." As Chun moved to execute the order, Helena turned toward the observation pane. The Earth filled it, blue and alive. She could see faint traces of orbital lights, stations that didn't exist on any public registry. Humanity's surface looked untouched, pristine, deliberately underestimated. Exactly as planned. For generations, the Terran Confederacy had hidden its true strength beneath the illusion of vulnerability. They had learned long ago that nothing disarms an empire faster than arrogance. When the Empire's probes came centuries earlier, Earth had answered with silence. No aggression, no defense, just patience. And while the galaxy forgot them, humanity rebuilt itself underground and beyond, far past the limits of imagination. Now the masquerade was over. Helena exhaled slowly, fingers brushing the console. "Signal to Earth Command. Contingency 7 has been executed. Confirm readiness for full spectrum containment." A soft tone acknowledged her transmission. Nothing more. There was no celebration, no fanfare. Just a single word returning through static, confirmed. She turned to Commander Rios, her second-in-command, a broad, stone-faced man whose calm carried an edge sharper than fear. "They'll come back with reinforcements," he said quietly. "A fleet this size doesn't vanish without a reaction." "They'll react exactly how we expect them to," Helena replied. "Pride first, strategy later." Rios gave a faint nod, his eyes flicking toward the viewport. "And when they realize what they've awakened." She hesitated only a moment. "Then they'll start to understand why we stopped pretending to be civilized." Below, fragments of the Etherian began burning in Earth's atmosphere, bright streaks like falling stars. For the civilians who saw them, it would be another unexplained phenomenon, one more mystery added to the official silence surrounding orbital events. Humanity's own population had not been told of the contingency's existence. Most would never know. A comms officer turned from his station. "Captain, incoming signal. Origin, the surviving Imperial ship. Admiral Vurektal requesting communication." "Patch him through." The bridge lights dimmed as the alien admiral's face appeared, a pale mask of fury and disbelief. His uniform was scorched, his background dark with smoke. "What trick is this?" he demanded, voice ragged. "No species develops technology like yours in silence. You were primitives." Helena studied him for a heartbeat before replying. "We were quiet, not primitive. You violated every treaty of technological restraint, every known law of development." She interrupted him gently. "You destroyed our colonies. You targeted civilians. Don't quote law to us." Vurek's breathing grew heavy. "You think one ship changes anything? The Empire will bury you beneath its fleets. You've invited your extinction." Helena's tone didn't waver. "You already tried that. It didn't work." He leaned closer, eyes burning. "Then you're prepared to exterminate us all." "No," she said softly. "We're prepared to end the cycle." The transmission cut abruptly. Vurek's image vanished. Helena gave a single nod to Chun. "Mark his escape pod. Let it drift. They'll follow it back." Rios frowned. "You're letting him go." "He'll tell them what he saw. It's more effective than any warning we could send." For a moment, the bridge fell silent again. The only sound was the steady rhythm of the ship's reactor core, deep and patient. Humanity had waited centuries to show its hand. Every destroyed colony, every loss, every humiliating defeat, they had all been pieces of the illusion. The true colonies were hidden far beyond mapped space, their industries buried inside dead moons and hollow asteroids. The Nemesis was not a prototype, it was one of many. Rios leaned forward, studying the display of Imperial fleet routes. "We have movement near the rim. Long-range signals suggest fleet coordination." Helena's lips curved in something that almost resembled a smile. "They're tracing his pod already." "Good. Do we engage?" "Not yet. Let them gather. We'll make an example they won't forget." Her words carried no anger, no thrill of vengeance, only a kind of terrible precision. Every step was premeditated, part of a plan woven through decades of human secrecy. The Empire thought they had found prey. They had walked into a demonstration. On the edge of her awareness, a low, familiar voice echoed from memory. Her father's, a general long dead. "Victory isn't about destruction. It's about making the enemy remember why they should never try again." Helena straightened. "Deploy recon drones. Begin scanning for ripple space corridors. We'll predict their next warp routes before they're even set." "Aye, Captain." The bridge came alive again, motion-controlled but efficient, like a single machine. Humans worked as one, wordless, focused, disciplined to the edge of cruelty. There was no joy in their faces, only purpose. Serene watched all this from the ruins of the Etherian, clutching a damaged console for stability, as her pod detached from the dying dreadnought. Through the viewport, she saw the Nemesis, a black shape against starlight, silent and magnificent. She couldn't decide whether to hate it or admire it. The humans had done what the Empire believed impossible. They had turned invisibility into strategy, patience into annihilation. She whispered to herself, they knew. The pod shuddered as it entered warp, coordinates already transmitted to the Empire's nearest fleet command. Behind her, the remains of the Etherian disappeared into the dark, and the Nemesis turned slowly toward the void, waiting. On its bridge, Helena Ward clasped her hands behind her back and stared into the stars. Somewhere beyond them, 1,000 alien commanders were preparing their counterstrike. She welcomed it. Humanity would not chase them. Humanity would not plead for mercy or offer threats. They would wait again, silent and ready, until arrogance brought the Empire to their doorstep a second time. When that happened, Helena intended to end the war before it truly began. She lowered her gaze to the glowing projection of Earth and murmured, "They think they're coming for vengeance. They have no idea they're already inside our design." The stars shimmered faintly, as if the universe itself were listening. And in the endless dark beyond Sol, the Nemesis vanished once more, folding into nothing, leaving behind only silence and the faint whisper of something ancient returning to life. The capital world of the galactic empire, Varnes Prime, glittered beneath the sterile glow of its orbital mirrors, a planet sculpted to reflect perfection. Its spires stretched like glass needles toward the stars, each one a monument to a civilization that believed itself eternal. Within the Imperial Council chamber, the illusion of control was beginning to crack. Grand Admiral Vurek Tal stood before the assembled senators, his uniform repaired but still scorched around the collar. The sight of him, once an icon of invincibility, now bore the stain of failure. The chamber's golden acoustics turned his voice into an echo that seemed to accuse him with every syllable. "I watched it," Vurek said, his tone trembling with restrained disbelief. "The human ship did not move through space, it erased distance. Our sensors failed before it fired. Shields disintegrated as if the laws of matter were optional. They destroyed the Etherian with a single strike. We didn't even have time to scream." A murmur swept through the room. Dozens of alien delegates whispered, their confidence wrapped in thin layers of mockery. One senator, a tall, plume-feathered being from industrial houses, leaned forward. "So you lost a battle. Fleets can be rebuilt. What you described sounds exaggerated." Vurek's eyes flashed. "Exaggerated." He tapped his wrist console, projecting the captured footage onto the chamber's air. The Nemesis appeared, a shape of absence, blacker than void, absorbing light, sound, and comprehension. The image of the Etherian's dissection played out in perfect silence. When it ended, the hall stayed frozen. "They did that," Vurek continued softly, without broadcasting a single threat. "They didn't gloat, didn't demand surrender. They simply acted as if they were removing a stain." Another voice rose from the crowd, brittle with arrogance. "And what are they, Admiral? A handful of primitives with a stolen warship? We've crushed 100 rebellions before breakfast." He turned toward the speaker, every word sharpened by cold fury. "Then you have never seen true war. You've forgotten what fear feels like. The humans remember." Serene stood near the back, silent. She had been allowed to accompany Vurek as a witness, though few paid her any attention. But her mind replayed the same scene endlessly, the human captain's calm voice, the mechanical precision of their retribution. There was no hatred in it, just inevitability. As the senators resumed arguing, Vurek's gaze met hers briefly. In his eyes, she saw something unfamiliar, a shadow of doubt, a wound deeper than defeat. The debate devolved into chaos. Some demanded immediate retaliation, citing honor of the Empire. Others urged restraint, arguing that mobilizing fleets without understanding their enemy was madness. The First Minister, a serene creature of logic and polished rhetoric, raised a hand for silence. "Admiral," he said, "you claim humanity wields technology beyond our comprehension. If true, how have they hidden it? Our probes, our intelligence networks, our centuries of surveillance, none recorded such capacity." "They didn't hide it," Vurek replied. "We never looked in the right places." A silence settled, heavy and uncertain. Serene stepped forward, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "Permission to speak." Amused laughter rippled through the chamber. She was far too low in rank to interrupt a council session. But Vurek gestured faintly. "Let her." She took a breath. The humans were studied as a curiosity, violent, emotional, but short-lived. Yet they have a pattern. They learn from extinction events. Every catastrophe in their history made them stronger. They treat survival as a science. If they hid, it wasn't fear, it was calculation. The chamber quieted again. Her words carried a tremor, but the logic within them was undeniable. Vurek nodded slowly. "They waited for us to come to them. They wanted us to underestimate them. Every destroyed colony, every surrender, it was bait. They let us believe we had broken them." A senator slammed a clawed hand against the desk. "Conspiracy theories. One ship cannot overturn an empire." But another delegate whispered, one ship ended yours. The council began fracturing. Paranoia spread like a virus. Political factions flared, the militarists calling for total extermination, the pragmatists urging diplomacy. The fear was palpable, but it wore the mask of pride. No one wanted to be the first to say aloud what everyone was thinking. The Empire had met something older and colder than itself. By the time the meeting adjourned, orders were already being sent. Fleets would mobilize near the border sectors. Every admiral was to prepare for an offensive against Seoul. The Empire had chosen denial over wisdom. Later that night, in a quiet observation deck overlooking the capital's shimmering skyline, Serene found Vurek alone. He stood before the glass, the lights of the city reflected in his haunted eyes. "They won't listen," he said softly. "They think this is another rebellion to crush. They have no idea what's coming." Serene hesitated. Then why not resign command? Refuse the order? He let out a bitter laugh. Resign? Cowards are purged. The Empire rewards loyalty, even to its own destruction. She stepped closer. "You've seen what they can do. You know the truth. There must be another way." He turned toward her, voice rough. "There isn't. The humans will come for us again, not with vengeance, but with precision. They won't conquer us. They'll dissect us. That's what terrifies me most. We'll beg them to be monsters, but they'll remain civilized." Serene met his gaze. "Then we warn them. Even if they don't listen, someone must." He stared at her for a long moment, then gave a small nod. "Prepare my flagship. If we can't stop the council, we can at least prepare to survive their mistakes." When dawn rose over Varney's Prime, the fleet was already mobilizing, hundreds of ships forming an armada that shimmered like a storm cloud across the upper atmosphere. Vurek watched them ascend from a balcony, a metallic tide of pride and ignorance. "They think they're marching to victory," Serene said quietly beside him. "They're marching to a lesson," he answered, "and humanity will be the teacher." As the fleet accelerated toward the stars, reports began flooding in. Systems at the outer rim, key supply worlds, relay stations, shipyards, were going dark one by one. No explosions. No distress calls. Just silence. Vurek's hands clenched the railing. "How far have they already spread?" "All sectors report losses," Serene replied. "Whatever this is, it's coordinated." He didn't need confirmation. He knew. The humans weren't striking back. They were demonstrating inevitability. He turned from the window, voice hardening. "Signal the council. Abort the offensive. Recall all ships." The communications officer hesitated, pale. "Transmission channels are unresponsive. Command relays are." "Offline," Serene finished. They exchanged a look, dread mirrored in both their eyes. The Empire's proud network of control had collapsed without a single shot fired. Outside, Varney's Prime sky darkened, not from nightfall, but from the sudden bloom of wormhole ruptures forming in orbit. Silhouettes emerged, sleek, silent, geometrically perfect. Human ships. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. Vurek whispered the only truth left to say. They were never defending Earth. They were already here. And as the first Terran transmission broke through the static, calm, polite, inevitable, the Empire finally understood what it had awakened. The sky above Varney's Prime tore open like a wound in space, spilling white light across the city's spires. Every communication channel screamed interference. Every sensor went blind. The Imperial defense grid, once the pride of 1,000 worlds, collapsed in seconds beneath the weight of something invisible. From orbit, the human fleet descended, no formation, no warning, each vessel appearing as if pulled from thought itself. The HSS Nemesis led them, silent and immovable, a black monolith against the storm. Grand Admiral Vurek stood inside his command citadel, gripping the edge of a console as tremors rippled through the floor. The holographic display flickered, struggling to render the incomprehensible. Dozens of Terran ships blinked in and out of existence, phasing across distances faster than physics should allow. Imperial cruisers fired desperately, their plasma bolts passing through ghosts. The return fire was mercilessly precise. No chaos, no vengeance, only geometry and silence. "Admiral," said Serene, standing beside him, voice tight with disbelief. "Our fleets aren't even registering them as targets. It's like they're erasing data as they move." Vurek's jaw tightened. "They've mastered war to the point it doesn't even look like war." Through the viewing pane, the horizon burned with the light of falling ships. Cities that had stood for millennia disintegrated under invisible bombardments. Yet amid the carnage, humanity's restraint was unmistakable. The bombardments cut neatly around civilian zones, their precision horrifying in its compassion. Vurek realized they weren't trying to annihilate, only to end resistance as quickly as possible. A low chime pierced the chaos. An incoming transmission. Human signal encryption. "Put it through," he ordered. The screen flared to life, revealing Captain Helena Ward. Her face was unchanged, calm, expressionless, the stillness of someone who had already accepted victory. "Admiral Tau," she said, "your world's defense grid has been neutralized. Your fleets are out of position. I am authorized to negotiate terms of surrender." Vurek stared at her, surrounded by the sounds of his empire's death. "You call this negotiation?" Her gaze didn't waver. "This is mercy." He laughed bitterly, the sound rough. "You destroy cities and call it mercy. We destroyed your armies, not your people. You had centuries to stop before reaching Earth. You chose to test us. We chose to finish the test." Serene stepped forward. "Captain Ward," she said, forcing her voice steady, "what do you gain from this? You already have victory." Helena regarded her for a moment, eyes softening by a fraction. "Survival. Not just ours, yours too. The galaxy needs balance, not conquest. You mistook peace for weakness. That mistake ends today." The line went silent for several seconds. Outside, the bombardments ceased. The human fleet hovered motionless in the upper atmosphere, their formation like a constellation frozen in judgment. Vurek felt the weight of that silence pressing into his chest harder than any weapon could. "Transmit the order," he said finally. His voice trembled, but only slightly. "All Imperial vessels stand down. Cease fire. We surrender." The words, once unthinkable, now felt like the only truth left to speak. Across the planet, resistance flickered and died. The storm of light faded, leaving only the distant hum of Terran engines. Vurek sank into his chair, staring at the ruins of the sky. The Empire's banners still hung in the chamber, their gold sigils reflecting firelight. Once they had symbolized eternity. Now they looked like mockery. Hours later, under the shadow of the Nemesis, a delegation was assembled in the Imperial Hall of Accord. The humans arrived without soldiers, only diplomats and a handful of officers. They did not parade victory, they carried it like a burden. Helena Ward led them herself. Her uniform bore no insignia of triumph, only the quiet authority of inevitability. Vurek faced her across the vast marble floor. His face was hollow, the fury burned away, leaving something closer to understanding. Serene stood slightly behind him, her expression unreadable. "You've won," Vurek said. "So what comes next? Annexation? Occupation?" Helena clasped her hands behind her back. "Reconstruction. Under Terran oversight. We'll dismantle your war infrastructure, stabilize your colonies, and allow self-governance once you're capable of peace." He studied her, searching for cruelty in her words, but found only precision. "And if we refuse?" She met his gaze evenly. "Then we remind you why you shouldn't." The chamber went still. Even the air seemed to hesitate. Serene stepped forward, breaking the silence. "You could have erased us," she said quietly. "Why didn't you?" Helena's expression softened, only slightly, but enough to reveal the truth beneath her armor. "Because extinction is easy. Discipline isn't. We learned that the hard way. Every scar on Earth taught us restraint. Every war we fought with ourselves prepared us for this one." She turned to leave, but paused. "You built an empire on the belief that fear sustains power. You were wrong. It only delays collapse. What sustains power is memory." Her footsteps echoed as she and her delegation exited the hall. The human fleet began to withdraw from orbit, disappearing one by one into folds of light. No triumphant music followed, no banners, no broadcast of dominance. Just silence. When they were gone, Serene exhaled shakily. "They didn't conquer us," she whispered. "They changed what conquest means." Vurek remained still, watching the empty doorway. "No. They reminded us what it feels like to be the lesser species. Perhaps that's the mercy she spoke of." He turned toward the shattered skyline outside. Varney's prime still glowed, battered but alive. For the first time in his life, Vurek felt something approaching humility. He knew that this was not the end of the Empire, it was its evolution, forced by those it had dismissed as primitives. Days later, as reconstruction began under Terran oversight, a single transmission was broadcast across the known galaxy. No threats, no demands, only statement. To all civilizations observing this conflict, Earth has no desire for war. But if war is brought to us, we will end it. Permanently. The message repeated once, then vanished into the stars. On the balcony of the Reform Command Citadel, Serene watched the horizon where Terran ships had vanished. "Do you think they'll come back?" she asked. Vurek's gaze lingered on the empty sky. "They never left. They don't need to. Every empire in the galaxy will remember this day, and that will be enough." He turned away, the faintest trace of grim respect softening his voice. "They warned us to stop attacking. We didn't listen. Now they don't need to pretend to be civilized anymore. They simply are." The wind carried the scent of smoke and rain through the open hall, whispering through broken glass. The war was over, but something far greater had begun, the reign of quiet dominion. High above, the stars shimmered faintly. Somewhere beyond them, humanity watched, patient once more, guarding a peace only they truly understood.